This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Imagine life as a whistleblower, a man who believed he had to speak up when major cases like Edward Snowden's were about to fall through the cracks because of fraudulent activity. You get the idea behind the book, Holding On to Integrity and Paying the Price.
Hi, my name's Blake Percival. I live in Wetumpka, Alabama, and I'm a whistleblower. I spent my career working in the criminal justice system, and I just felt driven that I had to share with the world that you can do the right thing and win.
Now, you know, the thing about whistleblowers, just generally speaking, you get a bad rap right off the bat.
That's true. For some reason, the term whistleblower has a negative connotation. And sometimes the things whistleblowers are telling us, we need to know.
Well, it seems like you're always accused of an ulterior motive.
That's true. And what I found in my situation as a whistleblower was I was just a guy who was trying to do the best I could for my family and yet not do something that I found ethically wrong.
How did you find out what was going on?
I had been working in the investigations industry for a little over 10 years for a company that had been created by Congress to do the United States government's national security background investigations. And I had finally been promoted into an executive level position. And within just a few weeks, it wasn't hard to figure out the numbers of cases being delivered to the federal government far exceeded the capability that this entity had to actually do the investigations. So the first thing I did was stop the process by instructing my subordinates not to do this anymore. Within the industry, they called it dumping when they would deliver batch loads of cases to the U.S. government without clearing the people first. I was then directly ordered by my superiors to do it. I refused and I was fired. I lost everything professionally. And I filed a whistleblower claim with the U.S. government that took 4.5 years to work its way through the federal court systems.
You saw why these cases were not being investigated because they just let them go.
Yeah, so what USIS was doing was based on the profits they needed to bring in within a specific time period near the end of the month, they would just release cases as if they had been investigated. I did not know which specific cases this had taken place in. And when the federal government investigated my claim, they determined that this had taken place on 665,000 federal background investigations. 2 of those were Edward Snowden and Aaron Alexis.
And what did that do to your life?
It was horrible. I went from a 6-figure salary and expense account, all the benefits of being an executive, to unemployed overnight. And nobody believes you if you try to tell them, I didn't do anything wrong, and you're in that position. Surely you had to do something wrong if you were fired. And so I spent 4 years working menial entry-level jobs because I was blackballed in the industry that I had wanted to work in my entire life and that I had worked my way up in.
Was it worth it to draw attention to this? Did anything really change?
I believe it was worth it. I could not sleep at night if I did the fraudulent activity that was taking place. As far as what did change, yes, the U.S. government ended up addressing my concerns. They actually created a new federal agency to handle security clearances because of what I did.
Okay, and what happened to you?
So the federal government settled with the company that had done this, was put out of business. The U.S. government basically settled with them for pennies on the dollar. The Wall Street Journal had said that this company owed the U.S. government more than $7 billion, but they settled with them for a little over $30 million. And then they gave me a whistleblower award, which all whistleblowers are entitled to, a percentage of what the government recoups. And in my case, they recouped a little over $30 million, and they awarded me 20% of that.
Are you happy with that? Are you satisfied with that?
What I'm not happy about is that no one was personally held accountable. There were actual individuals that did this. They were not held accountable by our government. As far as what I was awarded, I feel that the percentage I was given was fair. But as a taxpayer, I'm angered that a company and a private equity firm took advantage of our government, endangered American lives, and their fine was minuscule compared to what they actually owed.
Yeah, and are they out of business?
The company is out of business, but as we all know, big companies like this, things are just reorganized. So the actual company that I worked for, U.S. Investigation Services, went out of business, but before they had gone out of business, they had formed several other businesses. So spin-off companies of them were sold, absorbed by other companies. To say they are out of business is somewhat misleading, but the actual company no longer exists.
And don't you think that, they were doing what the government wanted them to do? Did the government really want these cases investigated? Did they really?
That's an excellent question, and I'm very glad you asked it. While I can't say what was in the government's mind, I can say this: when the government investigated my claim and then filed their case in federal court, they said that the fraud took place from early 2008 until late 2012. And what that tells you is I filed my claim with the US government in July of 2011. So you had the director of this facility that processed security clearances telling you fraud has taken place July 1st of 2011, and our own government did not stop it until late 2012. So it, at least to me, appears they were at the very least complicit in allowing it to take place.
Geez, so what do you do now? You write books and you go on book tours?
Yeah, yeah, that, and I speak openly about my experience because I truly believe, as a father of four children, that we need examples out there that will tell people there are things worth standing up for and that you can do the right thing and win.
I give you a lot of credit for coming forward, Blake. Thank you. So, you want to be an entrepreneur? A chip off the silicon block. The power of entrepreneurial thinking will show you the way. From the creator of Thermogon, a woman who did the work in one respect. She started an entrepreneurial program at her alma mater, Ohio Wesleyan, and now shares her experience to spread the message. If she can do it, so can you.
Hi, I'm Carol Latham. I live in a western suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. I am currently retired and I'm spending the last trimester of my life promoting the value of entrepreneurial thinking and my passion for taking technology to market. A perfect stranger who learned about my story convinced me of the value of documenting it. He would not take no for an answer. His name was Joseph Dagenfelder, and I met him at a Cleveland Orchestra concert, and I laid out what I had done very briefly and not really realizing what I had done. And he convinced me that I needed to write this story down. I realized that I really wanted to inspire others to see the value of entrepreneurial thinking and to become aware of what a path might be to creating their own venture or business. And I also wanted to exemplify the many lessons learned along the way on how to succeed and still maintain a culture of high ethical standards. The experiences I have, I try to point out the lesson learned. One lesson is that you need to have a compelling competitive advantage in order to be successful. And I explain and define competitive advantage and what that means, and my experiences with people I work with who weren't realistic with themselves about whether they had such a competitive advantage.
How do you know you've got something and you should run with it?
You need to be able to ask yourself every day whether someone would buy your service or your product over what's out in the marketplace. And you need to know the marketplace in order to be able to make that evaluation. That gives you an advantage. Otherwise, the rate of success is going to go way down.
What exactly did you develop?
Well, it was a family of products that were thermally conductive, that were designed to help deal with the heat problem in electronic systems, particularly computers. So we had a tenfold advantage technically in our performance over what was currently available in the marketplace. And we were actually discovered by Intel as we went along, because when you start a business as a woman in Cleveland, Ohio, credibility becomes an issue. So when Intel discovered us, it really helped put us on the map and promote our success.
So, and that was Thermogon.
Means heat be gone, let's get rid of that heat. The failure rate was unbelievable in the beginning. When Intel introduced the Pentium and they started making electronic systems smaller and smaller, the problems just got worse and worse. So we were part of that system to make that all work. we did have a competitive advantage, but nevertheless, I didn't have all the credentials that you would normally think of someone who would do something like that. I often defined entrepreneurship as someone who can start a business with the 5 no's: no products, no customers, no employees, no plant or facility, and no money. I've made up my own definition for entrepreneurship. I think the whole idea of how I did it as a woman is significant. I refused to allow myself to feel discriminated against. Certainly, when I started, I had anxiety and concerns about being accepted in a room full of all men and me. But as I went through the process, I learned to embrace that experience. And it was a group of people, not a group of men and one woman. And I refused to allow myself to feel discriminated against. It is a lesson to be learned. No chip on your shoulder. Just go do your thing and do it as best you can. And I think the rewards will follow behind. It's about creating value. Sometimes, they think they're people that are only out to make a lot of money. And I don't look at it that way. We're trying to create value in our world. It can be a multitude of things where you can use entrepreneurial thinking. So it's about creating value. I've targeted initially college students because I see a really great need, and I think a useful tool for young adults wanting to be entrepreneurial.
All right, Carol, thank you. Our next author feels an uncanny connection to John Dillinger. They're from the same state, and their criminal careers, including armed robbery and taking hostages, came to an end in the same town. Check out OWA, Fear No Evil.
Hello, this is Spike, author of the book Fear No Evil by Spike. I'm currently a resident at Pasadena, California. I'm a retired ex-felon, ex-gangster, and now a published author. The reason I wrote the book was it is a body of thoughts that I was been told since I was a child, plus the 34 years I spent in prison, and write about those experiences. The reason I went to prison in the 70s was for armed robbery. The robbery charge was dropped because some of the people that we robbed and 2 polices was taken hostage across state line. And eventually we let them go unharmed. It's a case that began in South Bend, Indiana, and ended in Compton, California in 75.
Did you write while you were in prison?
No, in prison I was a jailhouse lawyer. My first court case, was in federal Supermax in ADX, Colorado. And once I was released in 2003, the state of California filed an assault charge on me, and I represented myself in court for the first time, jury trial. The jury deliberated 2 days, came back with not guilty verdict by unanimous decision. It's partly about the experiences of the interesting people I met along the way, especially the mobsters, gang members. I end up experiencing a good relationship with all of the groups because they approach me at different times for legal advice. The lessons you learn in prison, you can learn nowhere else on earth. Now, Compton's situation was different. They had me cornered in an apartment complex on Willowbrook and Murph Street in Compton, California. And they put on a woman's dress and a wig and wrapped up a blanket like it was my baby and put my shotgun under the blanket, sawed-off double-barrel gun. And told my friend to put his arms around me as if I was his wife. And we walked right out the door, right on through all of the police forces and SWATs and dogs and cameras and everything, got in the car, waved at them as we left. And that's how I escaped squat the second time. The message is there's no greater human force on earth greater than the power of a made-up mind. And I was determined not to go to jail that night. I was determined that I was going to die that night and I was going to take the people with me. So I convinced the authorities to open way and let me out. I did it by force the first time, but the second time I did it by using the technique of the fox. So I was in line in South Bend, but I was the fox in Compton. Most people are disbelief because they say what I did doesn't happen nowhere in America. But after I returned to South Bend to visit relatives in 2012, I did some research and stumbled upon the fact that John Dillinger is also from Indiana. And South Bend, Indiana was the last big hit before he got killed in Chicago. Had did the same thing across the street in the bank in 1934. And they took hostages and got away. But the strange thing is, in the store, when they prop the doors open, they say, "How many hostages you got?" And they say, "Who are you?" And I replied, "John Dillinger." And when I returned to South Bend, I thought I was coming to visit relatives, but I think it was his spirit let me know. All these years I've been wondering why I use his name. I'm a firm believer in reincarnation.
All right, Spike, that is some story you got there. I will give you that. We have got to take a quick break, but we're coming right back. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Everything you ever wanted to know about crawdads is in our next book entitled Invasion on the Farm.
Hey, hi, I'm Kimberly. I'm from Fort Valley, Virginia. I work as an in-home health aide. I got my inspiration for my book, Invasion on the Farm, by watching my son as a young man and his friends and cousins playing in the creek, catching crawdads, and I just wondered what the crawdad must be thinking, seeing these big boys chasing after him. I wrote it years ago. I started to, and then I found it and kind of rewrote it and then published it. It's about a crawdad family that starts hearing noises, and these boys start running in trying to catch him. He hides his family, and then he gets captured. He escapes once, and he gets captured again. And all of his neighbors and friends are being captured and carried in a big, shiny metal container, a bucket, and they get sloshed all the way up to the house where they're getting ready to be eaten. They don't know it, but then the big, humongous monster, the mom comes out and yells at the boys to come in and scares them away. So the crawdads get more scared, and they devise a plan to get out of that bucket and go home. The boys are their invaders because they're little crawdads. They don't know what these big monster, bellowing monster things are. So there's 6 little boys in the story, and of course they're not named, but my son knows who they are by looking at the pictures, and the boys will recognize themselves. First, they try to dig their way out when they're still at the creekside. They're sitting in a big hole that the boys have dug, and they're trying to dig out from underneath, and a couple of them manage to escape, but most of them end up being put from the big hole in the side into a big bucket. So then they decide that there's just no way they're going to die in that bucket, and they start forming a crawdad ladder and get every last crawdad out of that bucket. The last one reaching over to grab the last crawdad's little claws and drag him up over the side before they go crawling out in the moonlight back to their creek.
Do you really eat crawdads?
I have. My son really liked them. He used to dive for them in the creek. We had just a beautiful creek that come out of the side of the cave, out of the hillside, and it came out of a cave in just ice cold water. And that boy would have me down there at 10 o'clock at night so he could dive in the water and catch crawdads and have me cook them for him.
What do they taste like?
Kind of like eating a crab, honestly. Just a very, very tiny little one.
A little teeny tiny crab. Is the consistency the same as crabs?
Yeah, it's kind of the same consistency. We eat them the same. You dip them in butter. I read it to my own 3 daughters, and they all enjoy it, and I read it to other children. But with the COVID right now, it's really hard to get readings in libraries and things like that set up because it's just not really feasible yet. When things start opening up again, then I'll start going to libraries and doing readings and things like that. But just right now, it's just not. And especially with me being an in-home health aide, I have to be very cautious about where I am and who I expose myself to so I don't expose my patients to anything.
Yeah, I get that, Kimber. You know, all we have right now is social media, and hopefully this virus is going to be out of here soon. Thank you. The advice, write what you know, worked out for our next author who is so familiar with the cattle and the goings-on in his territory along the southwest border. He wrote a story so believable, friends and coworkers think they know exactly who he's talking about. Jump in the saddle with Cowboys and Indians.
My name is Bill Splain. My name on the book is W.J. Splain, and I work for the United States Department of Agriculture, patrolling the river for the Cattle Fever Tick Eradication Program since 1980. In Brownsville, Texas, as far south as you can go in the United States. I think it's a little debatable whether Key West is a little further south, but we're right on the border by the sea is the motto of the city, Brownsville, Texas. You know, I work in the area down there, and it just thought that, you know, with all the gun violence and the Indians and there's an animal called the Nilgai which is here now that was brought over from India years ago. And it just something I've been thinking about for years. It just all came together. Some of the places are real, some are fabricated, but the names are all fake. People say, "Oh, I know who you're talking about. You're talking about this guy. That's the county judge we used to have." I said, "No. It's all fiction. It's all made up." Back in the 1800s, there was a cattle rancher out in South Texas that wanted to improve his herd, and he had been to India before on a tiger hunt, and he saw these cattle that were roaming free over there and how well they did and how similar the terrain was to South Texas. And he wanted to improve his herd from longhorns to bigger, beefier cattle to stay in the market. So he devised a way to smuggle the cattle from India back over to the United States to improve his herd, in which he did. And then the Indians were, their cattle are sacred to them. So they, generations later, descendants of the Indians devised a way to have their revenge against the cattle ranchers. This one in particular, but the whole cattle industry in the United States, starting with that one ranch in South Texas. They come back to avenge their cattle being stolen. You know, they come back in, they're amazed. They've heard all these stories about how the cattle are abused, and then they come back and they go to a dairy and they witness things that actually take place in the cattle industry that stun them, that they didn't really know that was really done to cattle, you know, like ear tagging and castration and, you know, normal stuff we do to cattle. And ties in, you know, with the cartels and all that other stuff. You know, they're smuggling drugs across the river, and it all culminates in the same area on the river at the ranch where they're staking their revenge, and the drug dealers are crossing the load down there, and it turns into a big confrontation down there where nobody has enough ammunition because of the gun control laws. And it turns out that one of the bad guys in the book turns out to be a good guy because he pretty much saves everybody because he's the only one with enough ammunition and firearms to save the day. Gun control laws, politics, it all comes into play. It all ties in very well together at the end of the book. It's an easy reading, and it's a fun book to read, and it's there's no dull moments in it. It just flows pretty easily.
All right, nice job. Listen, before you go, can you tell us about the Cattle Fever Tick Eradication Program?
The cattle fever tick is a tick that, I don't know if you've seen the old Western movies where they had the cattle drives to Kansas City and St. Louis, and all the cattle were dying from Texas.
Yeah.
Well, it came back where it was this tick that is carrying this disease. So it was eradicated from the United States back in 1906. And our job is to patrol the border to make sure we don't get any reincursions back into the United States of this. Any Mexico livestock, cattle, horses, and the deer family carry this tick. So we have to make sure they don't cross the border. We apprehend the cattle, whether they're smuggled or strayed into the United States, and we send them back. Periodically, we have outbreaks, fever tick. This tick is only in Mexico. Well, it's here in the United States, but it only comes from Mexico now and South America. And that's what we do. We protect the United States agriculture industry, livestock industry.
Well, thank you for doing that. We appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome.
And here's another story based on experience, but pure fiction. This one reminds me of a combination of Escape from Dannemora and Orange is the New Black.
My name is Marquita Coleman. I'm from Augusta, Georgia. I am a published author.
You are a published author. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
But weren't you a corrections officer?
I was a correction officer between 2012 and 2017, based off life-known events, conversations I've had, but it's not a true story. Basically, I had a dream of becoming a successful author, and I was talking to one of my coworkers about coming up with a book about correction officers and inmates and how inmates can be very conniving and tricky when it comes to manipulating correction officers and things like that, and to bring in contraband into the prison. The correction officer, April, ends up falling in love with one particular inmate, Nathaniel Evans, and he influences her, and he's very charming, and he ends up setting up a trap for her to bring in contraband into the prison. Then she has to face the ultimate consequences if she doesn't abide by his rules, and basically there's no way out. She works at night, and the nurses, they sleep during the night when, they're not supposed to. So the inmate and April, they always meet up in a closet together. And then that's how they end up sleeping with each other. They never get caught.
Nobody ever finds out?
Nobody never finds out about them. So she finds out that he has another lover in the prison, and she goes ballistic. Why she goes ballistic? The other lover is a man. And so her revenge is all so sweet. It's all so sweet. I don't want to give the book away. You're going to find out what happens to her, what happens to him. She's gonna seek revenge, and the revenge is all so well. The interest in the book it comes in with the title. Once I tell a person about the title, it automatically intrigues them. And then when I let them know about the book and things like that, they automatically want to read the book. And then...
Are you posting things about it?
Yeah, I'm using my social media accounts, Facebook and Instagram.
Just hoping this virus gets out of here.
Yes. Yeah. So I can go to my book signings. I was going to have one at Barnes & Noble here in Augusta, but of course I had to put it to a halt.
Yeah, let's talk about author's rage. So many people had book signings lined up, and bang, everybody gets sidelined by this virus. Good news is every week we hear another story about how an author has gotten around not being able to do book signings by finding creative ways to use social media. So that really is good news, especially for writers who can't get out, virus or no virus. All right, that is all the time we have for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. If you missed anything, just go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.